I was originally going to push off this review to be like the third or fourth critique and like coverage, but I decided I'm not actually recording or I'm not going through the entire video. I am stopping after he finishes with, or Ross from Accursed Farms finishes with Dungeon Siege 1. So that's gonna be a little bit shorter than, or quite a bit shorter than the 37 minutes that's listed on the timestamp there, but um, this is the Dungeon Siege entry in Ross's Game Dungeon, which is a series on Accursed Farms, that channel that belongs to Ross. You might know him from the Stop Killing Games movement, but he covers a whole bunch of different RPGs and a whole bunch of different games in his Game Dungeon series. And this video is about, I think it's 9 years old. And I shouldn't say I think, I can just easily verify it. Yes, it's 9 years old. So this has been out for a long time. It is the most viewed Dungeon Siege review, and it's like got 1.3 million views on it, and you know, it's one of the first reviews that I remember watching when I was younger about the game, and you know, went back to. But I've seen it, I think, 2 times, maybe 3 times, but I am not as familiar, or I don't remember all of his points as much. I just know that like halfway through the video, he moves on to Dungeon Siege 2 and covers Dungeon Siege 3. So we're gonna be doing a little bit of this as we go. So without further ado,
Hey, welcome to the Game Dungeon. Today we're going to be earning this show's title and covering Dungeon Siege. Dungeon Siege is a fantasy action RPG. In the last episode we had some frustration, so I wanted to change gears. And in many ways, this game is the polar opposite of the Secret World. We'll get into that. So once we get past the intros, we have one of the more elaborate menus I've seen. Boom! This menu makes me think there's a bunch of gnomes inside my computer cranking all these gears to make the game work. Let's get started. Now, the story to this game is, I don't know. I must have...
Alright, we are already mentioning the story, so let's lock in a little bit.
played through this game at least 6 or 7 times, and I still don't know the story. I mean, yeah, we have the narrator giving me this exposition, but it's also dry and generic. I tried to treat the story seriously the first time I played this, but nothing stuck in my memory. This game may as well not have a story. I'm serious. I'm usually not very impressed by fantasy game stories, but this goes double for Dungeon Siege. The story is...
Okay, well, if we have played a game 7 times and we aren't able to accurately recall a generic story, so like if we're not accurately able to recall like the story, but we're still willing to call it generic, that's a bit troublesome, because it's like, if it is generic, it would be easier for you to digest and to recall and whatnot. And if you've played the game 7 times, you should be able to recall it, especially if it's generic. But to say that the game itself might as well not have a story is... again, this just reminds me of, the previous video, Pixel ZA's video, where it's like there's like nothing to the story or whatever. And it's like, no, there is a story. It is generic. I will, like, 100% it's generic, but there is a story, and you get, like, it is spread throughout the game in books, it's spread in NPC dialogues, and then it's given to you via, like, the main quest as you play through it. So, like, it's, yeah, to say that it's nothing or might as well not be there or anything like that, it's just like I feel like it's your attention span that's leading you to that conclusion, not so much that there isn't a story in the game. If you want to criticize the fact that the story is generic or whatnot, do so. Like, criticize the story beats, criticize the instances of what it is generic or whatnot. But yeah, it's you got to do that instead of just by saying, oh, there's nothing here and it's generic. You can't just like hand wave that.
There's some sort of evil force and you're gonna try and stop it. I'm pretty sure it's something along those lines. So instead, here's the story as I see it. You're a simple farmer, but then one day these orc goblin things start attacking your farm. I don't think this is the first time this has happened. So you say enough is enough, pick up a weapon, and proceed to kill everything in sight until this stops happening and you can get back to work. As far as I'm concerned, that's the entire plot of this game. You're just some farmer who's been pushed over the edge. Now, I don't expect you people of the future to be too impressed by this, but for 2002, these graphics are really nice. We have the stream, your farm, later you'll see the forest. This was...
Yeah, that is definitely the case for like 2002 game. This isn't like you know, like off the walls crazy, but like to load into this game at the time and whatnot. And again with the camera and everything, it definitely stands out when you compare it to other games of the time.
It's a DirectX 8 game, and I feel like they were making the most with what they had to work with. While the terrain always has kind of a blocky feel, the art design is pretty good throughout the whole game. But the meat of this game is the combat. And it starts off not so great. Your character misses a lot, and it doesn't feel particularly satisfying. Now, I'm playing this guy as a melee fighter, but there are 4 disciplines in this game. Melee combat, ranged combat, nature...
The point about missing, I am interrupting him here a little bit, but missing attacks, a lot of people fixate on this point, and it's just like, you aren't going to hit every single attack. If when you are just picking up, you're not going to land every single shot when you just pick up a bow or, you know, a gun or something, you know, and like if you just pick up a sword, you're not going to instantly hit your opponent perfectly. Like, you know, you're going to get deflected, you're going to miss, they're going to move out of the way, you know. And when you are a farmer and you just grab a weapon and then you start swinging and fighting, you're not going to land every single time. As you go into the game and as you get more experience into your weapon, that will become less of an issue, and that will reflect the reality that, hey, you know, it's a melee, you know, I'm going to miss sometimes.
4 disciplines in this game: melee combat, ranged combat, nature magic, and combat magic. My advice on this is going to run contrary to everything you read on the internet about this game, but I say go with melee combat or archery. Screw magic. The magic in this game for me is just not fun. It's effective, but there's a small delay to most spells you cast, so everything just feels slowed down. You can get off multiple hits with other weapons in the time it takes you to...
So, yeah, you can get off multiple hits with other weapons. Well, other weapons do have swing times. You know, you'll see weapons that are called like fast weapons or faster weapons or normal weapons or slow weapons, etc., etc. So they too have a wind up or a cooldown, however you want to put it, to each attack. Different spells have different wind ups, like different commitments to channel the spell. That is true, but it's shooting arrows and casting spells. They're different things fundamentally. They target different things and deal different types of damage, which is also important to note in this game, because like magic damage is somewhat relevant in this game. So it's just when you're casting a spell, it's it's just like swinging a sword or shooting a bow in regards to there's a wind up. There is a time before you can cast your next spell or shoot your next arrow. You know.
Cast one spell. Now, a few spells are quick, but as time goes on, they stop doing enough damage and you have to upgrade to the next spell, which may suck and be really slow. Also, mages are the weakest characters in the game, and all their abilities use mana.
So, mages are the weakest characters in the game. In some respects, yes, but in all respects, no. You're not the game, the base game does lack in armor for you to wear because the thought process is, oh, they get access to robes which are low in intelligence, but they drop with more enchantments on them. So that means like more bonuses to mana, more bonuses to intelligence, more bonuses to your combat magic skill, more bonuses to damage. So in respect of like HP and total defense, yes, they're the weakest there. In respect to overall in the game, no. Mages are the only, like, there are some range attacks that deal AoE. There's like Goblin Grenade and the Flamethrower and whatnot, but those have limited uses and come way late in the game. Or not way late, they come like more than halfway through the game. And mages, however, get reliable AoE fairly early on. Mages can also summon enemies, or summon creatures to fight for them. They also have utility spells, which they can use, such as healing, or transmuting, or buffing, and all of this sort of stuff. So just like a blanket statement, mages are weaker? No. But I do think they are the easiest to mess up, especially nature mages. If you're not casting damage with your nature mage, you are not going to level up. But that's already a bit long-winded here.
I think they're totally not worth it. Now, they are playable. In fact, they're incredibly varied. They have spells for everything you can think of. Damage, buffs, curses, summoning, manipulating the worlds, and so on. If you really want to, I'm sure you can play through the game as a mage, but I guarantee you, I'll beat the game before you do. Conventional combat is just so much faster. So we don't have a story to speak.
Conventional combat being faster doesn't matter if you're playing the game and having fun. If speed is the element for you in this game, if speed is like a super important in any element of any game that you're just playing through. It's just how fast can I start it and how fast can I end it. There's a lot more to the game going on than just speed, I would hope. And I'm okay with taking this game slower if I get more enjoyment out of it.
And the combat is kind of so-so. That's not a good sign. All I can say is just wait. Oh, and something worth mentioning, this game is obviously inspired by Diablo, so we have the familiar red and blue potions.
Here we have Diablo mentioned. Potions.
But there is a short delay when you heal. That's because your character literally takes out the potion and drinks it. So instead of healing just being a button that's symbolic the way it is in a lot of RPGs, here it's based on how fast can you chug. I think we can all agree this is the best healing system. I know lots of college students do. Also, you only drink what you need to heal up. So you can just drink half and save the rest for later. I like this in contrast.
That's something that we're gonna see this when it comes to across reviewers, is that potion system is actually fairly, I guess, innovative for the time. Because usually it's like you drink a potion, you drink the whole thing, They might heal over time, but once you could have a 200 HP potion but only be missing 100 HP, and you drink it and it would go away. But this game, it doesn't do that. But the second part, which I don't recall any reviewers talking about this, is that you can combine potions together. And so what that means is, say you have a health potion and then a small health potion. Both of them are not filled completely. So just like, just by happenstance or whatever. So your normal health potion heals you for 400, a small health potion heals you for 200. You can fill the larger bottle or the smaller bottle of potion all the way up to full, or as close to full as it can get, based off of the values that each one has. So say a normal health potion has like 60% of its healing left, and then a small health potion has 30% of it left. You can put that 30% of the small health potion into the normal health potion. Now, it won't make that potion 90%, because 30% of 200 is not the same as 30% of 400, but it'll make it increase by like 15%. So it's really cool how you can condense potions in that way and actually save space. And it's something that often goes overlooked by reviewers.
As to a lot of other games where you have to bring your character to the brink of death in order to maximize your healing efficiency. So we head deeper into the forest because it's not enough to just kill the monsters on our property. We have to push them back or they'll just keep coming. Our main enemies so far are the Krug, and they're sort of like diet orcs. They're pretty generic though.
Diet orcs. The orcs mentioned. Krug and orc comparison.
In fact, just about every enemy in this game is. We're fighting giant mosquitoes, amphibious fish, pit bulls, wolves, a bear. I'm not really sensing the great evil the story was talking about.
So, yeah. Not sensing the great evil the story's talking about at the beginning of the game. Yeah, I mean, I guess, I do recall other games, like Baldur's Gate 3 and Skyrim and whatever, where, like, the main villain is introduced at the start, but then, like, they go away and your character's just allowed to exist. But, not all stories and not all games have to start like that, where you immediately see that big imposing threat. Especially here, when you're on the outskirts of the kingdom, you're in the farmlands, you're all the way tucked away, you have your little farm in the forest, I'm not surprised that the big bad isn't at your doorstep being like, hey, this farm, this is ours. Instead, you're facing the Krug, who are, if we pay attention to the story, and as we will see, are coming downstream from the big bad evil things. And same with the bugs that you're fighting, the Frax. I believe that's what they're called, Frax. But they actually come along with the Krugs, who are they're both downstream of the big evil that is causing problems in the land. And yeah, that makes sense. You don't have to start. You don't have to start with Sauron standing over Frodo saying, I'm going to kill you. No, he just realizes, or he and Gandalf realize, oh, I have the ring, and people are being sent after me. They're not fighting the armies of Mordor immediately. They're running away from the Nazgul, which the Nazgul are significant, but it's not the full power that Sauron is and everything like that. You're fighting like bits and pieces of the evil force. So,
except for the orc wannabes, the pit bull the story was talking about.
Sorry, I'm struggling.
I'm not really sensing the great evil the story was talking about, except for the orc wannabes. It mostly looks like we're just killing all the wildlife. Whatever. I guess the farmer doesn't want to take any chances. Now, eventually we run into a crypt and get some skeletons and gargoyles, so I guess that's sort of evil, but this is super generic. Now, we have something interesting coming up, but before we get to that, I want to talk about some technical stuff. You may have noticed by now the interface...
I mean, it's generic, but it makes sense for the story, which we're not paying attention to, that the crypt that you're going through or is now having skeletons that have risen from the grave and are walking around.
This
Yeah.
game is kind of tiny. Well, even though I was able to mod this game to work in widescreen, the user interface uses fixed pixels. At the time of this video, 4K screens are slowly starting to emerge, so this game is not future-proof. At 1080, these menus are pretty small. I'd hate to imagine it getting even smaller. But besides that, I ran into a big problem with this game. At first, I was afraid I wasn't even going to be able to make this episode.
Yeah, the future proofing of this game and technical issues is definitely a real thing. I still have trouble, like, streaming in Discord, for example, this game sometimes. Alt tabbing when I'm playing the game causes, like, I can't alt tab back into it. It just completely messes up my computer. So, recording gameplay of this is going to be interesting, and I do remember this part Ross is going to talk about a little bit of the recording issues to come, but yeah, it is quite interesting to see that, like, this game isn't future-proof, like, technologically. Like, our more advanced quote-unquote technology cannot actually run this game properly. It is a bit funny and frustrating.
Because my frame rate was so bad. I was lucky to get 20 frames a second. It was dipping down into the teens. I read some advice online on how to fix it, but none of it worked. This is another one of those weird games where a system from 10 years ago runs it better than a modern one does today. But I got lucky and figured out the issue. It's the shadows. If you enable real-time shadows on the characters, the game will start to crawl. None of the other settings matter, but if you enable blobby simple shadows, it all goes away. Thankfully, that's not that big a deal visually, so I'm happy with blob shadows if it means I can play the game. Still, this didn't happen when I played the game a few years ago. Stuff like this is why I always get paranoid.
I guess this is something to know. The version that I play on is the Steam version. I do not have the discs anymore, unfortunately. But it is the Steam version that I play on. So some of the technical issues, if not all of the technical issues, can be due to Steam. And I know that other reviewers will talk about, or have talked about, issues with, like, the Steam version and whatnot. So I should clarify that.
About changing an OS. This sort of thing always happens with a new operating system. Sometimes there are fixes, sometimes you're screwed. It's also why I sometimes feel like punching people who think new software is always better. Doesn't matter what it breaks, it's new. Okay, back to the game. We go through the generic crypt beating up generic monsters. We get a big gargoyle as the mini-boss. Boom! That's what you get for being made out of stone. And then, aha, another person to talk to. Who cares? Actually, the last guy I talked to wasn't that bad. He told me that the Krug loaded up a wagon and crossed a bridge while it was on fire, and whoops. So I talked to this lady, and she's some sort of scribe. Whatever. But what's this? She wants to join me in my quest to kick ass? Why, yes. You may join me. Here, have some equipment I was carrying and get suited up. And just like that, we now have 2 people fighting the forces of darkness. This is definitely better, don't you think? Combat isn't quite so slow now. I'm starting to like this. So this continues on for a little while, and we start taking on bigger mobs. Very cool. We finally get to the first town, and my frame rate crawls on this cutscene.
Yeah, I'm not excited to have this issue. Somehow, Pixel ZA fixed the cutscene issue. I'll have to look into that. But it's definitely something that I've seen people take issue with.
Even though it immediately goes back to normal as soon as it's done. At first I was gonna chalk this up to just another computer mystery, but I figured this one out too. Apparently when this game has cutscenes, and anti-aliasing, it's impossible to record this at more than 10 frames a second. Seriously, it's impossible. Bandicam, Fraps, DxTory, none of them work. The only way I can imagine to record this would be to stream it into a second computer and record the feed. Because once again, computers of today can't handle a 13-year-old game. Gonna need 2 computers for that one. Either that or record it through a camera, because that looks slick, right? Oh yeah, beautiful. It's still a mystery to me why this works for 99% of the game, but not on an in-game cutscene. Sometimes I think the entire industry is conspiring to make anti-aliasing not work on anything. Alright, back to the game again. You may not realize it right away, but this first town is where the genius of this game emerges.
Yeah. Another common sentiment. Stone Bridge. It's where the game starts. I'm paraphrasing there, but...
Let's start with the obvious. You saw how happy I was with 2 people fighting. Well, this game lets you have not just 2 fighters, not just 3, 8. 8 fighters. Bad ass. Now, you don't get all 8 at once, but you get a lot in this first town. You can recruit 1 fighter, hire another one, and a nature mage? Well, not anymore, you're not. Here's your mace and shield. You can swing it like the rest of us. That's right. Any character in the...
Yeah, this is definitely a way that you can play the game. This is all melee party. It is definitely the easiest way to play the game, the most straightforward way to play the game, and the most, I don't want to say brain off, but brain off way to play the game. You just, all that you would need to do is equip people with the best armor and weapons that they can, and there is going to be a large variety between your team because of that, because as you look, you can see, oh, Zed starts with 12 intelligence and then 10 strength, 10 dexterity. So he's going to be behind compared to other people like Rusk, who he just recruited Rusk the fighter, and Georn, who's this guy right here. You know, so like there's going to be a lot of variance between all the fighters, but you just load them up with what they physically can use, what they're able to use because of their strength, and then fill them up with health potions, and then just left click and just go walk. So you could definitely play it that way, but you do lose something in regards to spellcasting, positioning archers and everything, but party composition, you can do a whole lot of different things. You can play a single character who just runs through by themselves and they hoard all of the XP, and then you just kind of become a bit of a menace. You can play an all-ranged party. I know that Irradiated Stalker on YouTube has like an all-ranged party that's posted, where you just use crossbows, and you literally have like a line of people that just essentially machine guns damage at things from range. And most of the time that works really, really well, because you just nuke everything in front of you. So you can definitely play it this way, but it is like ignoring a lot of what the game offers.
Game you can repurpose at any time to change classes. Though realistically, it's best to catch them early on so they don't fall too far behind everybody else. It's almost like you're one big family. When your lead guy gets better equipment, he can always pass off the old stuff to the guy underneath him, and so on. Everybody gets an upgrade. So if you play your cards right, you can leave town with 5 fighters ready to kick ass.
6, I forgot one, but okay. He's got it. I don't remember that note. But yeah, but Naidi in the temple you can grab. But you probably can't afford them all. I think in hard mode you can, but that has to do with like a secret. It's not secret, it's just not explained. It has to do with the rate that you get gold back when you sell items. So some items on hard difficulty, items sell at a higher rate than they do on easy or normal difficulty. So on on hard, I think you can get everyone relatively easily. Um, on easy or normal, I'm not so sure. I haven't played on those modes in a while.
But wait, there's more! You know how most Diablo clones have a lot of loot that enemies drop on the ground? In most of them, they give you too much and you can't carry it all. Well, instead of cutting back on the loot, Dungeon Siege takes it to glorious new heights by letting you buy a pack mule to carry 3 times what a normal character can. You can even buy more than one if you're really obsessive. So the next time you roll into town, it's going to be a payday to sell all the crap you've picked up along the way. This game awakens your inner kleptomaniac and brings real purpose to picking up everything that isn't nailed down. Also, this game has an automatic pickup button so you don't have to click on every last item. Your characters can do that for you. Man, I'm getting excited. This game just gets so much better after the first town. Now, a lot of this game is very generic, but there are 2 aspects about Dungeon Siege that are done so well, I feel like they propel it into Gaming Hall of Fame. The first, which you're gonna see a lot of, is the combat. Yes, the combat started off a little weak, but what can I say? Octuple your fighters, octuple your fun. This is no longer a scrappy hero and his sidekick. This is a posse. Who cares what the plot is? We're just going to roam the land delivering the hard taste of justice to all these creatures that don't deserve to live. And you can customize your party's behavior almost completely. You can control everyone individually or as a group, have them stick together or spread out, take formations, hup, 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 play defensively or attack anything that moves. And unlike most Diablo clones, you don't have to individually click on every single enemy. If you want, your fighters will take the initiative and fight anything that gets near them without you having to order them around. And that's how I like it. I'm not big into micromanagement. I love the fact that my fighters won't.
I think the not big into micromanagement statement here, like, shows with the party composition that that he chose. Yeah, an all melee group is like the least management you have to do in regards to character control. Well, that's not true. You can play a single melee character, and that would be the least management that you have to do. But you know, a group of all fighters is very close in that regard. It's kind of weird and unfortunate because it's just like, again, like it is like a party RPG. Like, you are. This is sort of the point of the game, is to be controlling multiple different characters that do different things. I don't want to say it's the point of the game, but like that is the flexibility that the system offers. So like that's also why the pause button is there. The pause button is to help you strategize what you're doing in real time. Hey, I did a thing there. But it's there to help you with, like, okay, I got to change spells, I got to reposition these people, I got to do this, I got to do that. And you know, you don't have to like that. You don't have to like that system, but like that is what Dungeon Siege is selling, and it does it very well.
Won't just stand there brain dead if they see an enemy coming. Yeah, get him! You don't need to stand around and wait for permission. In some ways, this blurs the line between an RTS and an RPG. Now, I've seen some people complain about how this takes the skill away as opposed to something more like Diablo. My response to that is, what skill? There's no skill in pressing a button.
We're gonna let him finish the point. Oh.
Button over and over. The skill in Diablo clones mostly comes from understanding the combat mechanics, knowing who to target and when to retreat. And you don't lose any of that with Dungeon Siege. If anything, at harder difficulties, I think it takes more skill because you're trying to keep up to 8 people alive, not just 1. Now, is this game kind of mindless? Yes.
Yeah, the skill of this game definitely is like positioning and strategy and micromanagement. It is not the same as like being like the souped up hero, single hero that is like clearing a dungeon or clearing ads or whatever, doing runs through a dungeon to get certain drop rates or whatever. You know, that's not what this game is selling.
Is this game really grindy? Yes. But it is so much fun beating the crap out of everything. This game is so addictive. It almost never feels like a grind. It's just one long road of beatdowns after another. And this brings me to the second thing that Dungeon Siege truly excels in. This game is a journey. I'll try and explain what I mean.
There you go.
This brings me to the second thing that Dungeon.
All right, so 1347. Yes, excels in two things. Journey. So yeah, definitely agree that the sense of a journey is the strongest part of this game, but let's see what he has to say before going into it.
Siege truly excels in. This game is a journey. I'll try and explain what I mean. When this game came out, one of the marketing pitches was that you never needed to load anything once you started the game. It has a dynamic streaming system built in where you can theoretically play the game from start to finish without seeing one loading screen. Now, when I first heard that, my thoughts were that sounded convenient, but loading screens aren't that big a deal. What I didn't realize is this actually changes the whole feel of the game on a subtle level. Dungeon Siege is an extremely linear game. Sometimes you have...
I think this is multiplayer gameplay here. Yeah, I don't remember who this individual is, but this is not the base game. This isn't the single player game. This is a party that has been ported into a multiplayer game, because I do not remember this anywhere in the base game.
What I didn't realize is this actually changes the whole feel of the game on a subtle level. Dungeon Siege is an extremely linear game. Sometimes you have side paths or a couple forks that rejoin, but for the most part, it's just one gigantic path. You're always moving forward. Except for some tiny exceptions, you never really have a reason to backtrack in this game. I mean, you can. You can walk all the way back if you want to. It's all connected. But it's this sense of moving forward and experiencing every inch of the trail. No time transitions, no fast travel, no teleporting, that really gives the game an organic feel and adds something to it that's hard to put into words. On a more tangible level, this makes visits to towns much more meaningful. The game is paced so that by the time you reach a town, you are
Yes, I don't mean to cut him off here, but that absolutely captures the value of this game being a linear game. It is the journey that you are going on. It is making it to the next town, resupplying, and going out from there. There are a few instances in the game where you can like somewhat easily backtrack after doing something, and I would recommend doing it. But there's not many places where you have to do it, if at all. There's like no places where you have to do it. But yeah, very well said.
Loaded down with loot, and every visit is a huge relief. It also means there's no saving for a rainy day. When you come to a new town, it's like the Oregon Trail. You want to spend everything you have getting all the best equipment for your party, because it could be hours out in the field before you come across another town.
So I just want to, I'll go into this more in my own video, but this is the price that you pay for respecking a character. So if we saw Zed before, when we first saw him, he was a 10 strength, 10 dexterity, 12 intelligence character. That was all the way back in Stonebridge. So since Stonebridge, after going through Western Cross, after going through Glitterdelve, and then making our way all the way to Glaciern, we have only leveled up our strength by 2. It's that's not much of a progression at all. Um, so breaking down the experience and how that makes sense and whatnot, I'll do that in my main video, but it shows the cost of reclassing.
Because it could be hours out in the field before you come across another town. I frigging love this. There's no instant gratification of teleporting back to town. It forces you to commit to your decisions and it increases the tension to the game. I mean, yeah, you can always walk back to town if you want to, but do you really want to walk 20 minutes both ways? Not worth it. Especially since this game does another thing I love in RPGs. No enemy respawning.
I know it's a facetious point, but it doesn't take 20 minutes to walk in between areas once you've cleared them. Like, at most, it would take 3 minutes. But yeah, it is not 20.
Everything you kill stays dead. If you walk backwards, this turns into a hiking simulator. Just keep moving forward. Now,
okay,
the
yeah,
downside to all this is when
where's my mouse? Jeez. Yeah, we can tell that this footage here where they all have their bows out.
This turns into a hiking simulator.
This is footage from the, here we go. This is footage from the multiplayer, because as Bongo has entered Mount Elspin Forest, that is a region in the multiplayer game. You don't get those notifications in the base game. Or in the single player game.
Forward. Now, the downside to all this is when you do finally make it to town, if you want to optimize your party, you're going to be spending a lot of time there. I can spend anywhere from 15 to 25 minutes just...
I'm not sure if I agree with that being a downside. I actually think that's one of the strong things about the game, is the fact that there's part of it is prep time, you know? Is when you make it to a town, you need to prepare for your next venture. You have to update all of the armor. You have to get potions. You have to, update all your equipment. Get potions. Maybe there's someone else that you can hire that you can bring along or you can pay for and whatnot. Someone that fills a gap between your composition, or in this case, just adds another sword for you to swing with. I actually think that's a good thing. And with inventory management, like, those sorts of things can be done a lot easier, especially if you have the transmute spell, which I know from earlier footage he does have in this playthrough. I did see the transmute on one of his players earlier, so.
Moving forward. Now, the downside to all this is when you do finally make it to town, if you want to optimize your party, you're going to be spending a lot of time there. I can spend anywhere from 15 to 25 minutes just selling and buying gear and figuring out which fighter should get what. This does get a little tedious, I admit, but hey, you only have to do it every couple hours. Plus, once you have a full team with good equipment, you are officially a wrecking crew. The beatdowns never stop in this game. I love it. But this game isn't without problems. It has lots of quirks. One thing I didn't notice right away is that the foliage near your character turns transparent as you get closer so you can see what you're doing. That's fine, except they disappear altogether. Watch me walk through this tree.
Yeah, some of the foliage and whatnot in this game does do that. It is a bit silly. I can understand the see-through aspect for only seeing through it, but the fact that you can physically walk through them does make it a little bit silly.
Ta-da! And for my next magic trick, we have water-breathing dwarves. This puddle is shallow enough that most characters can still breathe walking through it, but not dwarves. He's content to just chill there, apparently. Speaking of the dwarves, I do like how they...
Another silly instance.
Gave them a separate running animation and didn't just scale down the default one. I'd make my whole crew dwarves if I could. Now this isn't really a problem, but something else I noticed is that in the world of Dungeon Siege, bows fire more slowly and do more damage than crossbows.
Yes, this is an issue in the game. Crossbows versus bows attack speed. It's very curious because it's like bows deal more damage, but they have a slower attack speed, whereas crossbows shoot faster, but they typically have a lower attack speed. Or sorry, they shoot faster, but they typically deal less damage per shot. And again, in my video, we're gonna break down the game, the damage, how to optimize it, that sort of stuff. We're not going to do that here, but it seems backwards when you think about bows and crossbows, where it's like to reset a crossbow takes a lot of effort. You have to redraw the crossbow string, and like reset it, lock it, place your bolt in, and shoot. Versus a bow, which is just draw, shoot, or you could say draw, set, shoot if you want, but you could literally just draw and shoot. So it should be faster. You would think bows would be faster but lower damage, whereas crossbows would be slower but higher damage, like the other way around. But shrug. That is a valid criticism, though.
Which fire faster but do less damage. I honestly have to wonder
and if you look at this animation, I know it's a different video, but if we look at there was a point that was raised by Pixels ZA about sometimes archers shoot things and like they don't reposition when they're shooting a tree or something. And the clip example that he used had someone shooting a crossbow. This is what a crossbow looks like when you shoot it. There's very little tell when you shoot it.
Do less damage.
You can just see a bolt fly at the super fast into the opponent. So there's not a lot of tell from the base animation here, unlike with a bow when you're drawing it and shooting it. So in that clip specifically by Pixel ZA, I'm again like 99% certain that the character was actually shooting an enemy and not just shooting a wall. It's just that the animation doesn't have a tell, or doesn't have as good of a tell as bows. So sorry, bit of a side note.
Programmers misread the design documents or something, since this is the exact opposite of reality. Also, the minigun damage is way too low. And I was praising it.
Yes, the minigun damage is a meme. That is a sentiment that is shared by a lot of people.
Earlier, but the combat AI isn't perfect. There will frequently be times where some characters will just decide they don't need to join in the fight.
I am curious about your settings. You do have them minimized here, but yeah, the AI is definitely not perfect, but your settings does control your character's aggro and whatnot. So we can only see what their behavior or disposition is, depending on what's down here.
Even if you tell them to automatically. Yeah, don't worry about your buddies getting attacked. You're good. You're here.
Yeah, this issue I think is very interesting. I wonder if it has to do with like space around the people to aggro. But yeah, no, they depending on the settings again, these guys should be aggroing. It sucks because I can't see what settings you have, and each individual character you can set each of their behaviors and dispositions by themselves uniquely. So all of these guys could have aggressive aggro, but these two guys could have like stand your ground or something where it won't let them run. But this does happen. It doesn't happen frequently, but it also can be something that you kind of cause yourself, but depending on their disposition. I can't verify that here because obviously the menu for it that would be down here is minimized, but
as an impartial observer, that's why we brought you along. Now, probably my biggest annoyance about this game is the elevators. Occasionally you'll run into moving platforms or lifts that you'll have to put your crew on. Sometimes these are big enough to get everybody on board. Most times it's a mess. Damn it, no! This mine section is the worst. This is also one area where it really pays off to have archers instead of melee fighters.
So yeah, it's interesting how he like notes that this mine area is the worst, and like, you know, you want different party composition for this area. But yeah, that's sort of the point. Like, I can get it for some elevators, like this elevator, for example, where it's like frustrating to maneuver everyone on and everything like that. But in the mine area here, that's sort of the point. Is like, that's like, from a game design, that is the point. Is like, how are you going to approach this puzzle where only a certain amount of people can get on this space at a time? Who are you sending first? Oh, probably your fighters, and then you're going to send your archers, you know? Oh, there's an explosive barrel over there. I need to destroy it before I get onto the other side of this chasm, you know, to get back on the other side. You know, it's intentional. It's supposed to make you think, and it's supposed to make you determine, how am I going to move forward? How am I going to move my people forward? That's why these things also move automatically from a game design perspective, is that it's forcing you to make a decision. So it's like actually a good thing.
Damn it, no!
At least I think it's a good thing. It's an interesting, interesting
this
design.
This is also one area where it really pays off to have archers instead of melee fighters. Especially with those explosive barrels lying around. No matter how tough a fighter you think you are, you get in a fight with a barrel full of gunpowder, you're going to lose. Yeah, see? On that note, I find it funny that not only can you keep playing the game if your main character dies, but you can disband them too. There's no advantage in doing so, but can you imagine other RPGs where you could just kick out the main character from the group if you didn't want them? It would be surreal. And let's not forget the title itself, Dungeon Siege. It doesn't amount to much. Even though you spend about half your time underground, you only go in a couple actual dungeons in this game. The best parts are where you're deep in the wilderness above ground anyway. They may as well have named this Action Fantasy Game 2002. The title...
Yeah, that is a funny joke, but also I just... The Droog village elder does like make a name drop of the game where she says like the sec dungeon siege will soon be underway, and it's like in reference to the sec that are sieging the dungeon. But I mean, also this game, like, you don't need to be in dungeons 100% of the time for it to be called Dungeon Siege and whatnot. I mean, you can poke fun at it, I guess, but like, to me, it's just not as ridiculous of a name, I guess. So,
title Dungeon Siege just piles onto the generic fantasy template the rest of this game has. Ooh, a dragon head. Yeah, that's real scary, game. While there are a few small exceptions,
it's funny how he says that, but if you actually look, like,
scary.
If you actually, oh my gosh, if you actually like look what's happening on the screen, like one of his characters is almost going down, multiple of his characters are dropping to or below half HP. Like, it's like, you know, it's not a threat, you know, like it's just interesting.
While there are a few small exceptions, I want to say 95% of the enemies in this game you could find in Dungeons & Dragons. The game even has a beholder in it. What more do you want? So game designers,
I think
the game even has a beholder in it.
Dungeon Siege and generic. So I think, no, if you look at these guys here, this is, I think, because there's a half giant in this group. This is from one of the expansions. I don't even think this is the multiplayer. I could be wrong, but I don't even think that this is the multiplayer. I think this is from one of the expansions. I've only played Legends of Arana, but there's 2 other expansions that like follow up to the base game and Legends of Arana. So one's a follow-up to the base game, one's a follow-up to Legends of Arana. I haven't played those yet. I still need to play those. They are on my list to do for this video. I have played I've played the game and then the main expansion, Legends of Arana. But yeah, it's just interesting to know where he's getting his footage from, because this is not in the base game. You do fight Furies, that's what these enemies are called in the game, in the single player game. You do fight them towards the end of the game. And there are a lot of enemies that you could find or find like somewhat equivalents of in Dungeons and Dragons. So like there's like dragons, for example. Can games not use dragons because Dungeons and Dragons uses dragons? You know, like that seems a bit silly. Or elves. Can games not have elves because Tolkien popularized elves in fantasy? Or dwarves? Like, is that it? You know, like there's also quite a lot of unique enemies in this game too. If we want to look up the bestiary, like there's quite a few things that you can tell are inspired by broader fantasy tropes, you know, or broader fantasy, the broader fantasy genre, like dragons and drakes and, you know, beholders and whatnot, but it's not all of the game.
What more do you want? So game designers, remember, want to make a Dungeons and Dragons game but don't have money for a license? No problem. Okay, a giant skull.
I'm also just confused here because like during the time that this game came out, there was literally like Neverwinter Nights, there was Baldur's Gate that was going on. These games are literally set in the Forgotten Realms. They are set in one of the mainline settings for Dungeons and Dragons. So like those games do exist, and they lean in a lot more into like what it would be like to play in a campaign, or what it would be like if we made a narrative into a campaign and you have to make decisions as the player. Granted, like your character's already a set character, you know, and they have a few ways that their story can go, but like that is like how that's how those games are sort of envisioned, and how they explored that idea of being a video game for Dungeons and Dragons. Dungeon Siege is not like that at all. Dungeon Siege is a lot more focused, as you yourself, or as Ross himself has said. It focuses on the combat and then the sense of journey of like moving forward and pushing forward through this. It is not about like making like individual decisions and like building your own character and like, you know, like I'm gonna be a fighter, I'm gonna be the wizard, I'm gonna be the sorcerer, I'm gonna be the ranger, you know. No, it's you could even use the word generic. It's a lot more generic than that, or a lot more straightforward than that. It's more so about like, hey, I'm building a party and we're going on this adventure through this place. At least that's what the single player is based off of. That's not even what the multiplayer is based off of. But yeah, so I don't there's so much equivocation to this game and like Dungeons and Dragons, and just be like, hey guys, just do this and you can make a Dungeons and Dragons game. And it's like, this game isn't trying to be Dungeons and Dragons.
You got me there, game. That's original. So how's the music? Well, I have mixed feelings about the music to Dungeon Siege. On the plus side, there's a lot of it. I want to say there's over 50 different tracks for different areas in the game. It's generally okay.
You can look up a track list online. I think there's 40 some odd. But yeah, I think there's 40 some odd tracks in total. In the base game, Legends of Arana adds its own tracks, so there's that. But yeah.
Okay, nothing mind-blowing, but fits the mood.
We're just gonna be, this is getting into the music.
Pretty well. Sort of. I should say the music fits the environment well. A recurring problem with the music is that it frequently plays this calm, slow-paced tune in the middle of an all-out skirmish. I'm going to mute the sound effects to some different areas. Tell me if you think this fits what you're seeing on screen.
I want to let him finish his example before I speak.
I have to wonder if...
So, when you take out all of the other noise and you leave the music, you're leaving out a lot when it comes to this game. The diegetic sounds of fighting adds a lot to the game. It communicates a lot to you as well. So, like, if you miss, there's an air whiffing sound, like whoosh, that you hear when you swing a weapon and you miss. When you hit, there is like there's like more of a chunk. Depending on the enemy type that you hit, you'll hear it. And typically they have a grunt in response as well, where like they like if you hit like a goblin, they like scree a little bit. If you hit a claw, they growl at you. So the enemies on screen are claws. If you hit a claw, they growl at you. If you hear or if you hit a bandit, they'll grunt and they'll go like, oh, you know. So a lot of the the music, it does capture the environment and captures a sense of journey. A lot of the combat is carried by the diegetic sounds of you actively fighting and whatnot. Also, the music doesn't only have to reflect the combat on screen. In some areas, the music does reflect the combat really well, and that's typically during boss fights or like during the beginning of the game and whatnot. They reflect the combat, but this isn't like a Skyrim Oblivion type thing where it's like you've got your meandering music in the open world and then you have your combat music when the mud crab aggroes you. You know, this is like, I am traveling through this area and then I'm traveling through this area. I'm traveling through this area. So that sense of journey is reflected by the music because you tie the track to the individual place that it's played in. And like that's the sense of journey. And I don't think it's going to come up in this, but I talked about it in a previous video. That like sense of journey through the song carries all the way from the last track of the game, when you're fighting the final boss, to the beginning track of the game when you are fighting on the farm. You know, those two tracks have a chord sequence that is similar, you know, or that repeats, and you know it's supposed to capture that sense of journey. So it's not, the music doesn't only have to fit the combat.
They just asked the composer to make the score before he knew what this game was about? Like they just handed him some concept art of the environments and told him to hop to it? I mean, this music is pleasant, but a lot of it's not really connecting. Now, I understand they probably didn't want to do this because this is a medieval fantasy game, but let's face it, you could have constant heavy metal playing and it would fit this game just fine.
So, I mean, if we're only viewing the game as just like this hack and slash brain off, I click things and I watch people hit other things, sure, you can, but I mean, I guess since we're already disconnecting from the story and writing whatever we want as our own story in our brains, like we might as well do that for the music too. But you know, the music is there to communicate that sense of journey, which you said is one of the two things that Dungeon Siege excels at. It's journey, you know.
Now this game also has a multiplayer component, but I have never actually played the
multiplayer. This is something that is not mentioned by a lot of reviewers. A lot of people like don't actually acknowledge the fact that there is a multiplayer, at least when it comes to reviewers. They just review the main campaign. I think that has to do with the fact that the Steam version of the game has the multiplayer be disabled when you download it. I think that's probably the reason why, and you kind of have to like go through the forums or go to the Steam community page to like find fixes to like unlock the multiplayer like Ross did. But yeah, no, it's people don't like, the multiplayer is just as important, if not more important than the single player, because a lot of the game systems that we look at are further explored, vastly more explored in the multiplayer version, because you get into the higher levels there where you reach like level 100 and something. You know, the max level you can hit on paper is 150. In reality, you can't hit that high of a level due to like the way that the game codes experience. But it's like usually like in the 120s, I think that like that process stops working, you know, where the experience stops working. So you can hit that in the multiplayer, but you can't hit that in the single player. You just can't. It's the single player is like, okay, level 0 to level 50, somewhere around those, uber level 50, somewhere around there, you know, typically when you play through it. So yeah, people criticize this game without even without even noting that the multiplayer is where like the game really opens up, and like you're really able to explore the combat and the spells and everything.
Multiplayer to this game for one simple reason. You can only control one character. What's the point of that? One single player is such a downgrade. But
Um, yeah, that's you can only control one character because it's multiplayer. You're supposed to be playing with other people. Um, you know, it is different from the single player game where you can hire a lot of party members, but that's because it's not a multiplayer game. You know, it's believe me, when the expansions came out and the expansions were all of like the single player element of like, here's a new story, here's party members that you can hire or that were willing to join you and do that. Yeah, I agree that that is like that's where the magic of Dungeon Siege is, but we have to take into context that the multiplayer was meant to be played with multiple people and people that are controlled by real life people, not AI, you know.
to complicate things, the multiplayer to this game is huge. It contains its own original map, completely separate from the campaign, and it's somewhere close to double.
Yeah, the map is definitely huge in the multiplayer, and a lot of different areas that you can go to and explore. And it's kind of unfortunate because like the magic of this game that was its multiplayer, you can't really experience it that well anymore, because there is no way to connect into that anymore, by and large. Yeah, don't own dogs; they bark. Um, but yeah, the full on multiplayer experience is like it's a lost treasure. So rest in peace to that experience.
The size of the single player game. I've never heard of something like this happening before, where the multiplayer has much more content than a game with a single player focus. Also, I don't mean a better experience, there's plenty of games like that. I mean more of it. That's frustrating to have this massive portion of the game locked away behind ho-hum multiplayer. I guess it has that in common with the secret world. Well, thankfully, Dungeon Siege is extremely moddable, and there's been a mod made to enable the experience for single players. It's almost like getting a sequel to the game. Overall, the experience is fantastic, and in some ways is almost better than the normal single player. That said, the multiplayer map is much less linear, which makes it better and worse. Choosing where you want to go is a lot of fun, but sometimes the wide, massive areas feel like you're mowing a lawn to try and see everything in the level. It doesn't help that your movement speed is kind of slow. Oddly enough, Dungeon Siege is a game that I think does better when you're on more narrow paths. The multiplayer also has teleporters because the size is so massive, which I'm not crazy about, but they're used very sparingly, so it's not too big a deal. It is a big deal getting everybody on the actual teleporter, though.
Yeah, no, I've played some of the multiplayer, like probably like 3 hours of gameplay in it, and getting onto these teleporters, these smaller teleporters here, is just nonsensical. I don't know what they were thinking when they design these teleporters, um, they are way too small, especially for a multiplayer experience, of just like to fit people on it and to travel places.
How tiny this thing is. I guess I shouldn't complain since I'm playing with a full party in a map that's meant for one person, but this is easily the worst part of the game right here. Damn it! Oh, come on! Anyway, the multiplayer is mostly a giant remix of all the stuff from the single player campaign, but it really feels like its own world also. It also has a new area that's not in the single player at all. A massive desert full of mysteries. Not that it's any better, but the multiplayer actually has a story too, where you're recovering these artifacts to unlock this ancient chamber which contains some unique enemies also not in the single player. Now, I wanted to show this to you, but I had to make a judgment call if it was really worth the extra 15 hours on a game I've already played to show you 1 or 2 clips. So you'll just have to find that out on your own if you're interested.
And this is the thing I think that Ross, like the reality that Ross points out that other reviewers don't do, is like, yeah, there's a lot more to the game than just the single player. The time commitment that is required to play through the multiplayer is quite substantial, really. And, you know, a lot of people miss out on the greater portion of the game and only view the game through a single player lens. They don't view it through a multiplayer one.
Same goes for the secret chicken level. And while it's probably the best, this is just one mod of many. I'm gonna have to try some more out myself later on. I know one group remade Ultima 5 and 6 entirely in Dungeon Siege. There's such a wealth of content out there for this game, though due to its age, it's starting to get harder to find. All in all, Dungeon Siege is a fantastic experience if you like exploring the road ahead, great combat, and not much else.
May the road you follow be pleasant, and your vengeance complete.
Exactly. But to be completely fair, while I didn't think much of the story, there was one character I remembered from playing this game multiple times. Ladies and gentlemen, say hello to Jiraiya. He runs a
This is another reviewer who remembers Jiraiya from Jiraiya's Trading Post. He's apparently popular.
trading post out in the middle of the woods.
Who are you, then? Another of that short goblin cuss's errand runners? You tell that little green snotball I don't have any high and mighty magic staff, and I never did. I don't traffic in exotics, and even if I did have one, I'm not gonna go trudging through the eastern swamp looking to sell it to some damn foreigner. Now, if there's anything else I can get you today, maybe I'll consider not tossing your ugly butt out into the snow!
Also, I'd like to point out that he has a human head on his shelf. So that's Dungeon Siege. Now, I would end this here, but hey, this game turned into a franchise, so I want to cover the rest of it too. So let's get this all out in one episode.
So, other than this Dungeon Siege 1 being covered in 26 minutes, and there being only 11 minutes for 2 other games, that's a very interesting amount of coverage. This Ross does not cover everything that he did, which is interesting. He does not cover the Legend of Arana. No, like, there's only, I think, one reviewer that covered Legend of Arana in the expansions. I think the rest of them only, like, know of the campaign. So, that's it. This video is the most viewed Dungeon Siege review of all time. It has definitely had the most impact on anyone that has been looked up this game online. I don't think there's any video at all about Dungeon Siege in any capacity, any playthrough, or anything that is viewed more than this video. And unfortunately, this video doesn't cover the game in as much depth as the game deserves, I feel, and it doesn't accurately cover everything as well. So that's Ross's game dungeon about Dungeon Siege, and until next time.